In January this year, Brazil and Argentina's leaders met to discuss a bold plan, creating a common currency. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva met with Argentinian President Alberto Fernandes with the idea of coming up with a shared currency, the SUR. The reasons for making such a radical move include reducing dependence on the American dollar and easing trade transactions between the two countries. However, the proposal was met with skepticism from economists around the world, with many experts claiming that the idea is not only flawed but unlikely to bring the proposed benefits that it touts. One of the harshest critics likened it to opening a joint bank account with that deadbeat friend who owes everyone money and is unemployed. Harsh words indeed. It's certainly a revolutionary notion that rivals the EU in terms of scale and ambition. Brazil and Argentina have South America's biggest economies. However, it's the considerable differences between the two that has a lot of doubters ruling out the prospect of a shared currency. Nevertheless, let's look at why these two countries might want to explore such an option. What's in it for them? Two main reasons have been put forward. The first is clear. A shared unit of currency will reduce the dependence on the American dollar, which is often the currency of trade. Why is that good, though? Because the US dollar is currently at its highest level since 2000, with the dollar holding a 40% share in world trade. This can make things very expensive for the rest of the world, especially emerging markets such as Brazil and Argentina. The surging dollar means imports like food and energy have become more expensive. It also raises the cost of any debts that were created in US dollars. And it's not just Brazil and Argentina who are keen to break away from reliance on the dollar. Pretty much every country around the world that has been affected by it wants to and is looking for alternatives. For example, East Asian countries are seeking to increase their use of the Chinese yuan, and India and Middle Eastern countries are negotiating some areas of trade in rupees. Thus, it might be worth quickly looking at what's caused the dollar to skyrocket. Essentially, it comes down to inflation. In order to combat inflation, America's central bank decided to raise interest rates. Higher interest rates mean higher borrowing costs, which means less spending, which gradually reduces the demand for goods and services, ultimately tampering inflation. Another reason for Brazil and Argentina to go for a common currency is that it could make trade between the two countries a lot easier. It would eliminate the problems of dealing with exchange rates and fluctuating changes in currency values. This was very much the thought process when the European Union was set up. Single currencies meant smoother transactions and more integration. So on paper at least, a common currency for Brazil and Argentina seems to have plenty of benefits. However, the proposal has come with some heavy criticism, as I've been mentioning, including from economists from each country. One of the major flaws in the concept is that Brazil and Argentina have very different economies. Argentina is currently dealing with a staggering inflation rate of around 100%, which means that the prices for goods have, doubled if you're keen to any math. Over a third of the population lives in poverty. On the other hand, Brazil's inflation rate sits at just under 6%. When a country such as Argentina has inflation issues, its currency spending power is seriously reduced. This in turn devalues that currency when it's held up against foreign currencies. Such a situation would mean obvious problems when trying to negotiate a trade under a common currency. Brazil's economy is a lot sturdier than Argentina's, and Brazilian financial institutions have more credibility, both in the region and internationally. Plus, aside from the glaring differences in economies, a shared currency is only thought to work if both nations already have a strong trading relationship. However, there is currently a no free trade zone between Brazil and Argentina. Brazil exports less than 5% of its products to Argentina, while Argentina sends around 15% of its exports to Brazil. On top of that, both have vastly different export models. Brazil chiefly exports fuel, natural resources, and manufactured goods, while Argentina's exports are overwhelmingly agricultural. Still, this isn't the first time the idea of a common currency between the South American heavyweights has been tossed about in ideas. In the 1980s, there was talk of creating a gaucho, which was to be a shared form of currency between the two. Despite initial talks, nothing happened. More recently, in 2019, the Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro floated the idea again, but was met with very little enthusiasm, particularly as Argentina was battling with crippling inflation levels. Although nothing concrete has been decided amongst this last round of talks, many still agree that the basic principle has plenty to offer. After a deeper analysis, a more realistic and achievable option has been suggested by several economists. Instead of pushing for a potentially tumultuous new currency, it might be easier for the two nations to settle on a simple common unit of account. This would allow the countries to trade with their own currencies while agreeing on a specified value unit. The value unit would have to be agreeable to both nations, and it would act as a much more appealing option than the American dollar. In contrast, this is how it works now. Any trade transaction between Brazil and Argentina needs the US dollar to act as a price reference, meaning that if someone in Argentina wishes to import something from Brazil, they first have to convert the price from Brazilian reals into dollars and then to pesos. At the same time, the seller then has to change their dollars back to Brazilian reals. This not only adds an extra step to the process, but it can be problematic if the dollar fluctuates against either currency. However, a shared unit of account could create a standardized group of currencies that would be aimed at maintaining a real sense of price levels for any countries in the agreement. The time-consuming two-step process would now just be one step. Also, it would help eliminate volatility by fixing an exchange rate to a range of prices. This concept isn't unlike the ECU, which was a currency used as a trading unit in the EU before the euro was introduced. This idea has a lot more potential than completely replacing existing currencies. Not only would it allow for smoother trade interactions, but other South American countries would also be welcome to jump on board. The Southern Common Market, or Mercosur, is a South American trading bloc that was set up in 1991. Brazil and Argentina belong to it, as do Uruguay and Paraguay as founding members. Chile and Bolivia are also closely associated with this bloc. Ideally, a common unit of trade could enable all of these countries to establish a smooth and balanced trading system, with a crucial lack of reliance on the dollar. For now, the talks of some kind of common unit of trade is just that, talk. However, if the respective economies are able to make the necessary adjustments, then it certainly seems like something worth pursuing, or at least considering. Anyways, that's all for today, and take it easy.